Good morning and welcome to Monday Morning Roundup. I'm Gavin Hooten.
And I'm Lane Hott.
So Lane, a little unexpected weather this morning.
Yeah, to say the least, I definitely wasn't expecting to clear some snow off my car this morning. You know, it was a little chilly yesterday, but I thought it would kind of warm back up because it is now springtime. And getting into the later parts of April, I was kind of expecting the cold weather to go away. And I'm a little tired of it keep coming back and then having to go back into warm weather. But hopefully the weather warms up later on this week.
Yeah, I did see that the National Weather Service did put out a freeze warning for today and tomorrow through 9 a.m., with that covering Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York. But hopefully they're saying it'll warm up by Thursday. So hopefully by Thursday we can return to those nice warm weathers that we've been having.
I really hope so.
But what things did you catch over the weekend, Lane?
You know, over the weekend, if you weren't following, some basketball commitments rolled in from the transfer portal. One coming from Penn State forward Mason Blackwood. He's a Rochester native, so kind of bringing back a little bit of home for him because Rochester's, 2 hours north of here, roughly. And, kind of like Melvin Council a couple years ago, who was also a Rochester native. Hopefully he can bring a fire to us. And also a Big Ten school, getting a guy like that is very big for our program. Going into a new head coaching era, it's big to get players that can be a cornerstone piece. Following that, Ryan Colombe from Detroit Mercy followed along suit on the same day committing. And he's a forward, 6'9", a shot blocker from last year for them. And he was actually one of the best shot blockers in all of the Horizon Leagues. So that'll be interesting to see how, with the departure of Andrew Osasui, who was known as our shot blocker last year, how he can step into that role and kind of bring some defense to our side. But then also Taj Aduk, one of the top point guards in all of junior college. He started his career at Pepperdine, didn't have the best year, but then transitioned into the junior college scene last year and saw a lot of production out of him, and he'll be really exciting.
I did see that, and I think that's very interesting. I mean, you're seeing, I think it's with this new coming of NIL, a lot of guys that originally I feel like a lot of recruiting was coming out of high school, but now you're seeing a lot of, coaches recruiting senior guys, sophomore guys, just because, these guys have more experience with, Taj Aduk being NJCAA All-American, averaging 12.8 points per game. That's pretty good. So I think if he could bring that to this Bonnie's basketball team and bring that to this Division I level, that, we've seen him already previously at the Division I level. So I think if he can bring that back, that would be great for Bonnie's basketball.
And kind of like the current head coach and new head coach, Mike McDonald, he did struggle a little bit at Division I at one point. Same with McDonald. He had a little bit of struggles at Canisius, but then went on to be a dominant coach at Damon. So hopefully, just like Mike McDonald is hoping to come back to the Division I level and have success, hopefully the same thing can be said with Taj Aduk. But in other Bonaventure news, former Bonnie guard Buddy Simmons is actually looking to transfer to Villanova. There's a rumor about that, which would be super interesting to see another player for Bonaventure go up to the Power 5 level. Yeah. Last year we saw Chance Moore, LeJay Jones, and Melvin Council transfer to the Big 12 and ACC, and now having the Big East is known as like a power conference for basketball, so that would be very interesting to see him go play for a team that made March Madness this year.
Yeah, we did see a few of those guys have some good success with their transferring, so it'll definitely be interesting, and I wish him the best for sure.
In other Bonnie sports, baseball swept the defending A10 champs Rhode Island over the weekend, score 7-4, 15-13, 5-4, and I actually got to check out some of those games because I was on camera. Did you get to catch them by chance?
I actually did walk by while both those games were going on, and I actually never realized that with baseball they play so many games. Like, they had a doubleheader on Friday and then another game on Saturday, so I feel like that's really impressive that they're able to play, 3 games in one weekend and especially take away 3 wins.
With that doubleheader on Friday, 18 innings in one day isn't easy by any means. You have to manage your pitching and all that. So getting 3 straight wins against a team as good as Rhode Island was, watching the games, there's a little bit of tension going on between the dugouts. And what I was hearing from someone else on camera, Rhode Island was getting a little fed up with St. Bonaventure's chance. So maybe that had a little bit, maybe St. Bonaventure's team culture had a little bit to do with their success against the defending champions.
Yeah.
But, moving into, speaking of A10 championships, coming up, women's lacrosse looks to make the A10 championship for the second straight year, as they did have a dominant win against LaSalle, 19-9. And I know they've been having a good year, but I definitely was not expecting them to have such a big win.
That is something I definitely thought was unexpected. I know they have struggled over the past few years, but it really does look like this year they're making a change, and with a dominant win like 19-9 at a good team like LaSalle is very impressive and honestly very unexpected.
And on the other side, seeming to have struggled in conference all year, they are now 0-5. Men's lacrosse did fall to Delaware 19-16 in a high goal battle. And as much as I love to see them put some wins together, they're in a little bit of a rebuilding era. They have a new coach, so some grace can be given there, but it's safe to say they probably won't be winning any A-10 championships this year.
Yeah. And I also did catch some controversial news between the Pope and President Donald Trump. Pope Leo has called for peace, diplomacy, and an end to the war in Iran, while Trump has commented that the Pope has been too liberal, weak on crime, and has a bad foreign policy about the war. So I know this is very controversial with us, being at a Franciscan school that is part of the Catholic Church. It's always hard in times of war, I feel like, but I think the Pope does have a good message. I think it's, right now what we need is peace. We need to end to this war. And over the weekend, I think the Pope was just saying that he didn't want to argue about it and he would rather focus on spreading his message of peace and love. Did you see anything about that?
I saw the little bit of the Donald Trump coming out with a little bit of a interesting Twitter message, AI image creation. I saw a little bit about that. I didn't get too much into it, but I do know that when the Pope was announced and it was a new an American Pope, I definitely didn't see this as a result. So hopefully it can all just be resolved and we can get back to politics and religion being kind of separated and kind of not interfering with one another. And then also, but coming back on a high note, did you happen to see that Sabres game last night at all?
I didn't get to catch it, but I really wish I did. Well, I did hear that it was one of maybe the best game of the year.
I got to catch a little bit of it, and I follow some people who were there, and they said it could have been one of the best sports environments they've ever seen. And they've traveled all around the country, seeing game to game, and Sabres scored 4 third-period goals to win the game 4-3, and from what I've heard, it seemed like Buffalo was in control the whole time, but they just struggled to get a couple shots in the net, actually. But it looks like Buffalo's first playoff appearance in a little over 5,000 days was a well worth wait for those fans, because I heard it was electric. And, they look to continue to win that series against the Boston Bruins. But moving on, over the weekend, there was a Gender Representation Day this past Friday. It was in Doyle Hall. I was not able to go because I had class, but I did see that it's going to be posted online. And, there were 3 big topics that were talked about: representation and storytelling, communities telling their own story, and sports media and journalism. The likes of Mike Corey, Kate Wolshofer, Emily Watkins, and recent grad from last year, Ellie Elkins, were in attendance and did speak at the conference. So I would definitely have to check that out because I feel like that's super interesting.
I definitely think, any person not just interested in journalism could learn something from this. I think just learning about creative storytelling, learning about people's communities, and then, people always want to learn about sports. So this will be posted online to SBU-TV later this week, so definitely something you want to tune into. And looking forward to the rest of the week, we have Rugby CRCs, which is their 7-on-7 national championship coming up this weekend, which will definitely be exciting to see if the Bonnies can return and get the back-to-back championship, which I'm sure we would all love to see. There's only 3 weeks left of the school year, so for our seniors, we hope you finish strong. That's all we have for you today. For Monday Morning Roundup, I'm Gavin Hooten.
And I'm Lane Hott. Everyone have a great week.